all right, that band has a demo. Cool. I'm going to get that. So I always just grabbed this stuff and I never got rid of it, essentially. You know what I mean? Like I always, like this, as corny as it sounds, is like this scene kind of changed my life.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 New Jersey punk rock scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. There were a lot of punk/emo/hardcore bands that came out of the Jersey scene back in the day. I didn't realize how many there actually were until Joe Pulito showed up in the North Jersey pop punk Facebook group and said, "Hey, everyone, I've archived all of it." I mean, I don't think he has 100% of the bands, but I think he's got like 98% maybe. This is purely a passion project for Joe because he's not getting paid, and this takes a lot of fucking time to do. He's got to get the songs, he has to organize them, he has to know the names of the tracks, he has to upload them to YouTube, and now he's doing it to SoundCloud. He's got to get the album art. I mean, this takes a lot of fucking work to do. So as Heath Midtown said in his interview, episode number 3 if you missed it, he stated that Joe is doing the Lord's work, and I completely fucking agree with that statement. If you're looking for any bands back in the late 90s, early 2000s era, then check out NJPParchive.com. And if you don't see a band, then reach out to Joe. It's Joe Pulito. You can find him on Facebook, or you can go to the North Jersey Pop Punk Facebook group and join that, and then tag him and say, "Hey, dude, where's this band?" And I'm pretty sure he has it, or he'll get it, and then he'll upload it. I was able to get Joe on the phone, and this is what we talked about. The MXPX show in Bordentown, our thoughts on Saves the Day, having a hand in changing the scene, Drive-Thru's rise in the scene, Dashboard's breakup with Drive-Thru, which was an interesting thing to say the least, Brian Fallon's stint in Lanemeyer, how he started the NJPP archive, how he actually acquired the songs, if he's gotten yelled at by any bands yet, his process for getting all of the music online, how the initial YouTube channel got disabled, what the future holds for the archive, and a ton more. Before we begin, thank you to all the people who have donated to the podcast. If you'd like to do so, just go to thiswasthescene.com and send whatever you'd like. Also, here's the big news that I mentioned last week. So if you were a fan of my old band Lanemeyer or our buddies Humble Beginnings, then mark your calendars for Saturday, July 21st, because both of our bands will be playing a 20-year anniversary show at Debonair Music Hall in Teaneck, New Jersey. Pre-sale for the tickets will be $15 and then $20 at the door. If you'd like to buy the pre-sale tickets, then go to debonairmusichall.showware.com. I'll make sure to put this on the This Was the Scene landing page. Also, make sure it's on the Facebook page. The reason we're doing this is because it's been 20 years since both of our bands released our first records, and luckily the Bergenfield girls decided that they wanted to put on a show, and they reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you guys want to do this?" And after I wouldn't say it was a fast yes, but we finally got all the members to say yes, and we're like, fuck it, let's do it. So I can't speak for Humble, but I can guarantee you that this is going to be the last Lanemeyer show that we will ever play. I just know that, and if you are hoping to see us again in the future, it's probably not going to fucking happen. And I know I said this back in like 2006, I think, when we played a reunion show, but I'm pretty sure that I know this is going to be fucking it. So if you want to check that out, we're going to show up, and we're going to fucking bring it, and it's going to be a really good fucking time. So yeah, again, go to debonairmusichall.showware.com and get your tickets. Thank you again to the Bergenfield girls for putting this together. You guys rock, and I can't wait to see you all when I head up to New Jersey in July to do this shit. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with anyone you know who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Joe Pulito, thank you for taking the time on this lovely Friday where it's very warm down here in North Carolina, and you probably are full of snow. You're in Jersey still, right?
Yeah, I'm down by Asbury Park. It is not nice right now. So it's windy and shitty and still winter for some reason, even though it's April.
Perfect.
So,
you can keep that Jersey vibe in the tone where you're like, I'm angry against life.
I'm just jaded from Jersey. Exactly.
Just jaded from Jersey. Well, Joe was popping up in the North Jersey Facebook punk scene Facebook group, and it was just, hey, I archived every song, and we were like,
right.
Holy Christ. And everyone keeps saying they're like, he's doing God's work.
That's a bold statement, but yeah, that's But yeah, as far as getting started and stuff, so I'm not even from Jersey originally.
Yeah, take me back to let's go back to the beginning of how you even got into punk rock. I always want to see how everyone started out with their lifestyle.
Like that, my story is not probably it's similar to other people's, but like I grew up in Queens, and I actually my family moved to Jersey right before I started high school. So I was like 13 years old, and I went from Queens to this fucking little shit town called Lawrenceville, which is like right outside of Trenton.
Yep.
So for me, it was like fucking culture shock. Like I went from, like sidewalks in like an actual city to like farms, and like I saw a cow for the first time in my life. It was just bizarre. So it was really weird to adjust. But then as far as like getting into punk rock and stuff, I got into like loud, aggressive music through like Nirvana and like grunge stuff, in the 90s, just like everybody. And, like at Columbia House, I got like 20 CDs for a penny, or, you know what I mean? Like it just stocked up on Soundgarden, Pearl, whatever, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we all still owe them money.
Yeah, it's straight up. And then, then it kept going from there. And then it was Green Day that got me into punk rock, which was kind of everyone's kind of gateway drug into this world, I think. Yeah. At least in, our age group. It was like, saw him on like MTV Buzzbin. I saw the video for Longview, and my head just fucking exploded. I was like, what is this? Then it kind of spiraled from there because, I was like, wait, Green Day has more records than Dookie? I was like, I got to find it. I was like, there's ones before Dookie? I was like, I got to find these, So I saved up money and bought them from like a record store in my town. And then, from there it was like, all right, so, you get that, get those early CDs and like, oh, there's like Lookout Records. What's that? And it's like, and there's like a catalog for all these other bands. I've never heard of any of these bands, so it just kind of, I saved up money and bought like, I picked 3 CDs at random. It was like Operation Ivy. Thank God that was the one I landed on. Like a Screeching Weasel CD, Wiggle, and then it was like Pansy Division, which was the wild card.
Yeah.
But it was, then it just kind of went from there. It's like all the Lookout bands, and then it kind of was like, all right, then there was all these Fat Records and NoFX, and just kind of, it just opened me up to like a whole new world, which I think, like it was a lot of people's like similar story,
Yeah, I think a lot of bands, I think a lot of people, they would buy the CD. The constant theme I've heard is they would buy the CD. They would first see what record label it was. They'd look, however we were able to look it up, because there weren't, the internet really was. It
was starting, but it wasn't what it is today at all. But yeah. And it was like, the thank you list.
The thank you list. That was it. You'd buy every band on the thank you list.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, well, if this band thanks this band, then they obviously have to be good or at least listenable. I got to figure out, so I'll go find their records or whatever and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as getting into like, the local stuff.
Yeah. How did you so you started listening to these bands? You get Nirvana, because I think I saw Nirvana when I was younger. I was 13. I saw it on MTV and it blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely,
my friends were the ones who got into punk rock and got me into it. So you found these bands, you went, Green Day, remember Longview being on MTV, and we're like, holy shit, they said masturbation on TV, and he's like,
dude, just that video in general was nothing.
It was
that
gross.
was on MTV.
It was just
grimy. It was grimy.
Video.
It was literally shot in their old house that they were like a squad house they were living in. Like I remember specifically like Trey's cymbals were just like torn to shreds, like he just like chewed them. I was like, why is he playing those? Like that can't sound good, But I was like, but this is incredible. Like they just didn't give a fuck, So
you're listening to all that, you're getting the CDs, and then what was the thing that, like, what was it, a conversation with someone? Did you see a flyer in the mall? Like, what got you to show up at a local show?
So, like I said, I moved from Queens to Jersey, and I was right before I started high school. So I show up to high school, and I don't know anybody, and all these kids in this town, they went from kindergarten up to high school and they all knew each other, So I just kind of kept to myself. I didn't really talk to anyone. And then this one kid like sort of started talking to me because I had like a patch on my backpack or something, like a Screeching Weasel patch or something. And he, because he was like this skater kid who like corned in 311 or some shit, but he's like that kind of stuff. He's like, oh, effects, blah, blah, blah. We started talking. So he calls me one day out of the blue and he's like, hey man, I was at a skate shop by my house and I got this flyer. It says punk rock show on top. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. He's like, what's the deal? He's like, do you want to go? I'm like, I guess so. I was like, I've never heard of any of these bands, but that's part of the charm, and that's how like in that time period, that's how you found out about new bands, like you you had to actually go see them, So I ended up going to the show, and you guys actually played it. So this bill, it was at the Trenton American Legion, which was technically in a town called Hamilton, like a town over from where.
Was that the Shower with Goat show?
This was a Congress of Cow show, actually.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So this lineup is, looking back on it now, after I did all the archive work and everything, just looking at this lineup, and I knew it was significant at the time, but like looking back at it more, I'm like, damn, this is fucking stacked for like that scene became.
Was it the outdoor show in the pavilion?
No, that was
Bordentown.
That was probably the Hightstown American Legion.
Yeah.
That was like punk stock. But it was these girls, Lee and Rochelle, did the show. Do you remember them at all? They're like two young, you're probably teenage girls or whatever. But anyway, they booked a lot of shows in that area for a while.
Okay.
Anyway, so the bill was, I'm looking at the flyer now. So Nothing New opened.
Oh my God, Nothing New.
Which is up, they were up in your territory.
My buddy's younger brother Rod was the bass player in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was them, and then a band called Your Mama Love Us played, and they were from like the Trenton area.
The nicest guys, the nicest dudes. And Dave actually still works at that bar in Trenton.
Dave did Mill Hill. Yeah, Chris
Big
Pinto
Dave.
was the lead singer. Like, he's a good friend of mine. Me and him actually had a band together for a while, and he was at my wedding and shit.
Really?
So,
he was the nicest dude.
Dude, he's solid. He's still a great guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, so then they played. Congress Cow played. This band called Second Chance played. They were from Jackson. They ran that label, Direction Records.
Okay. Was it DIY Rection, or is it?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, then they Boxcar played, Humble Beginnings played. It was stacked, man, and it was Humble Beginnings, a 3-piece. It was that original lineup there. But yeah, so I go to the show, and I'm like, just watching these bands, but the whole concept just blew my mind, because I'm like, all right, there's like 100 people here. They're all my age, like they're my peers. And like the girls that put this show together, who like took the money at the door, they're all my age too. I'm like, these bands are all pretty much my age for the most part. It was just kind of mind blowing that this was happening, and it was all just run by teenagers essentially. Yeah. So I just kind of, it was a crazy experience, because I felt like there was people there who I shared common interests with, obviously, and then the whole process of putting a show together, like I just started analyzing everything. I'm like, so how did they get this place to agree to do something like this? And I just kept on, I would hound people from there, like asking questions on how the hell do you book a show? Like, how did you contact these bands? Where did you find out about these bands? And it just kind of, it snowballed from there. And then, like same thing, I got flyers for more shows when I was there, and I was like, well, I'm going to keep doing this, so we go to, another spot was the Derby Firehouse in Bordentown, down there.
Do you see the video that's online? That's clips.
Yeah, Steve from Shower Goats put
Steve
that up.
Goats.
Yeah, so he was a bit older than everyone, I remember, but he did a lot of shows in Hightstown, because I think they were technically based out of Hightstown, East Windsor. So they would do a lot of shows over there at the Hightstown Ballroom, and there's a Hightstown American Legion and everything. So it was all those kind of bands, but the Derby Firehouse was kind of like the mecca of that area. Like it was
huge.
wild. It was wild. It was a huge place, and some of the shows that ended up coming through there just didn't even fucking make sense. Like I remember the one show that came through there was that really it shouldn't have been there. It was MXPX. They were headlining, but it was right after Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo came out. So it was
God.
You're talking about like the peak of that band, essentially, as far as not necessarily their peak, but you know what I mean? Like it was probably the biggest they were on MTV. You know what I mean?
Yeah, record.
Like they showed up to this firehouse in a fucking tour bus, like a proper tour bus. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? But the rest of the bill was insane too. The direct support was Homegrown. They were relatively big at the time, But the rest of the lineup was nuts, because the touring package, the one of 3, was the fucking Get Up Kids. And this is like 98, so like 4 Minute Mile was out,
and the EP.
And they were starting to people were starting to pay attention to them, but they were not, they weren't big yet to the point where they ended up being. But then Humble Beginnings also opened.
Wow.
And it was literally like a week after Gabe quit.
Yeah,
so
I
it
was
was like,
which lineup was this?
Yeah, it was right after Gabe quit. So Jeremy was in the band, but this fucking dude from Long Island ended up in the band, and it was Eben from who ended up being in Saves the Day.
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah. He never learned the songs either. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised.
He would just show up and just play whatever. He would just kind of pick it up and say, "Yeah, I got this."
Yeah, because he was and
Sick.
he was insanely talented.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him, and like this whole show was kind of like I could see a wave starting from this show because this was like October, November '98, and I remember watching Humble play, and they were great as always. They were super tight. But there's a weird thing with them because Gabe was out of the band. I was like, what the hell's going to happen? You know what I mean? And this dude from Long Island shows up, and he stood out so bad as far as how he dressed. Because, like Jeremy or all those guys had like huge jeans on or whatever, and like all that shit. And this dude is like skin tight black jeans, this fucking like
the New
super
Balance
tight
sneakers on.
Yeah, this super tight sweater and like a scarf on for some reason. You're like, dude, you're inside. Like, what are you doing? And his bass was like resting on his chin. He was playing it so high, which was just the opposite of, the way everyone was playing their instrument at the time. And he was using his fingers. I was like, dude, what is happening right now? So he looked super weird, but then the Get Up Kids came on. And I was like, this is interesting. Like they dress kind of differently too, and there was like quiet parts of the song and there was like ballady parts. But I was like, you could see where this scene was headed, and they were kind of at the forefront of it. It was interesting, but back to like, so that show happened in Bordentown. Like, there's no reason that tour should have came through Bordentown,
No, man. I when it started, I kind of think of Jersey. It was a really big epicenter for a lot of bands because we would be on tour and people would talk about New Jersey like we would talk about California or Chicago. And Jersey became kind of like the Chicago of people. They were like, we got to go to Jersey. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh my God, you guys have so many great bands that come from there. And it was known. Like, people really liked it.
And the shows were just insane as far as attendance wise, like on the grand scheme of things. Like, there'd just be, a bill of 7 or 8 local bands, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
There'd be like 300-400 kids. It's like, why? It's like, because we have literally nothing else to do.
Exactly.
Like, because, it's just, and that's the one thing I realized, I come from Queens to like the suburbs of Jersey. Like, these kids are so fucking bored, man. And it's like they need to get some sort of outlet for creativity and just angst in general. And there it was. It was like,
Well, I mean, like the main structure was you show up to the show around 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
You catch the first band, or you'd be outside smoking cigarettes with your friends,
Sure.
or everyone would be hanging out, and then some people would be drinking in the vans, or some people would be just talking in the vans, and then you'd go in, and the show would be done, and everyone would go, hey, we're all going to the diner down the street.
Yep.
And
it was just
you roll in with like 20 people in one long table, and just everyone would order waters, and the waitresses were so like, oh fuck.
Yeah, they like 20 people would share a plate of fries.
Exactly. They hated us so much.
Yeah. But that was how it worked, and I kind of like. I was fascinated by it because I came from such a different world,
Where did that take you as far as that? Did you said you had put on a show that we had played. Now, did you like what was the balance between being in bands, your bands, and then putting on shows? Like, what came first?
So I started when I went to that first show. I'd never even picked up an instrument, but seeing my quote unquote peers, like I was like, oh man, these kids are my age. They're figured out how to do this. Like I can figure out how to do this. Like I just want to be in a band so bad, So I was like, all right, well let me figure out how to play guitar, right? Okay. So I put my fingers on the guitar and I'm like, nah, this is gonna take too long. I was like, what's the quickest way I can get into a punk band? I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to play bass.
Play bass.
I was like, cool. So you're using like your whole hand and all your fingers to do this, and I can just use one finger on one note, and it's the same thing. It's like done. I was like, I'm gonna play bass. Cool. So, but I started booking shows in like 98, and it was like the Burlington Elks Lodge was where I started doing shows. And that was another venue that we used, that was like one of the 2 main ones we used in that area for a while. So like, and Burlington, it was a weird spot too, because they would do some crazy shows down there. Like RX Bandits played there, like Diesel Boy played there.
Yeah, Diesel Boy.
Yeah, I was like, why is this Fat Records band, like coming through Burlington?
Were they? They weren't on Fat. They were on Fearless first, and then they went to Fat, or they just always stay on Fearless.
Diesel Boy?
Yeah.
I don't think they were on Fearless.
No, I'm thinking of Dynamite Boy. Dynamite Boy was on Fearless, and then Diesel Boy was always on Fat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Google this.
So I started, booking shows. Basically from that first show I went to, and then I would just go to more shows. I would just ask people, and at that point AOL was a thing, so I'd find people's, IM people and just get like, how did you do this? How does this work? And I just kept going from there, and I haven't stopped since. So I started booking shows in 98, through 99, and then Derby Firehouse shut down in like late 99. So I kept going. So I just kind of took over as far as like those shows in that area. And I was doing shows at the Burlington Elks Lodge like into 2000. And at that point, like I was in a band in high school and we were pretty terrible. And it was just like, we played a handful of shows, recorded a demo, but it never really got past that point. And I was booking shows. When I was booking shows, there was this band that would open a lot of the shows called 37 Slurp.
Yeah.
And they, at the time, like I got to know them because I would book them on the shows, and they were really nice. They were really cool kids, and they were pretty good at what they were doing, just like fast melodic punk or whatever, and their bass player quit, and it was right around the time where I was like just about to get my license, and I was like, I'm just gonna fucking join that band. So I knew them enough, and I went to the drummer like, yo, I'm your bass player now. And he's like, why? What? I was like, no, I'm in your band. I'm gonna have a car soon. Like a bunch of people owe me favors for shows because I've been booking their bands for the last 2 years. It was like I can guarantee us shows, and I have a vehicle to get us to the shows. And they're like, all right, yeah, you're in the band. I was like, cool. So I did that for a few years, and just like any other band, like from that era, it was like, all right, we played every square inch of Jersey, and we'd go up to Long Island and upstate New York and down to Maryland, Pennsylvania, and we did whatever we could in my Buick, and it was like, all right, I was starting to get older, and I was like, I kind of want to do this for real, and I was like, all right, so I quit that band and started another band called Breakaway, and we did that for about 4 years, and we're getting into like 2003 to 2007.
Yeah, you got to see that part of that whole scene.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a different thing too, because at that point it was, we had our first practice like January 2003, and that band was set up to go for it, quote unquote, and it was like I found, 3 other like-minded people who were in the same boat. Like, we don't want to go to college. We want to do this for real. We want to at least give it a shot, see it through, So like, first practice January 2003, we recorded at Tracks East in March. We went on our full U.S. tour in June. Like, we were just like, we played shows in between ever since. And, we all lived, like, it got serious. Like, we were living together. Like, we had a 1-bedroom apartment that we shared with 5 other people. There's like literally 9 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment at one point.
Jesus.
Then we lived into a house, and, in between, we would tour, and then we set up a studio in the house and record our own records and put out our own CDs and everything. And we did that for like 4 years until about 2007. And that's when we played our last show.
Now, when you transitioned, so right, I mean, I've talked about this in previous episodes, especially the ones up to now, but it's, when we started off, it was people were kind of catching on, and then they'd show up, and then like you're talking about, there would just be massive amounts of kids at these shows. And then when I moved to California 2001, right in September 2001, and when I came back from California 2004, I would start going to shows with Chris from Day at the Fair and just being like, this looks so different. This feels different. So you lived through that transition. At what point did you start seeing that change?
I mean, when I first really, I think the one part that really started it off, like I mentioned, like the Get Up Kids in like 98 or whatever, but I remember when Saves the Day put out Through Being Cool, it just changed the whole dynamic of what was going on in Jersey. Or like, it was still happening, but you could see it like shift. And it wasn't it wasn't a bad thing. It was just different, and that's what it kind of morphed. And I remember like it happened. It almost seemed like it happened overnight. It was like every ska band became an emo band, like or called themselves an emo pop punk or whatever the term was. It was like literally, and we can go down the list. It was like President Lemon became Paulson. You know, like After the Fact became Welcome Home Travis, like overnight. Like it was crazy. It was like, so there was like one horn player left in the ska band. Well, you can play a keyboard now, right? They're like, yeah, totally cool. We're an emo band. Like it was so funny how quick it shifted.
And like I was talking to one of these episodes. I was saying how AP Magazine came in and they shift their roster from these what's the alternative sound, and all, then Taking Back Sunday was gracing the covers.
Yep.
And the Drive-Thru catalog, and then the Vagrant catalog. When the Vagrant picked up, I think it was in one shot. They got Get Up Kids, Saves the Day. They already had Face to Face, and there was one other band, Alkaline Trio. They got
it was one full swoop.
Yeah, and everyone caught about. They're like, holy shit! And then Saves the Day, I guess they put out not Through Being Cool, Stay What You Are on Vagrant, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, they were part of that.
Fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, that was like that was when they finally started to sound like their own band. Yeah. I think like the first two the first record was literally a Lifetime record.
Absolutely.
The second one was like a Lifetime record light, and then it was just like, cool, we're our own band now.
I didn't hear that much Lifetime in the second record. I thought they went in the poppy direction. Chris's voice is always great, but they definitely got away from the hardcore punks, like pop punk sound, and just went straight to like their own. I think they really created their own sound.
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of what Lifetime was doing and then like making it a little poppier, because they still played like fast, like Lifetime was doing.
Yeah, that's true.
But it just kind of morphed. It was just enough that it was just poppy enough that it separated them from. And honestly, man, they were like 5 like cute-ish looking dudes. You know what I mean? Like it was like Lifetime with like
they were good looking guys.
Yeah, I mean, like it didn't hurt their situation. Like the cover of Through Being Cool with them all looking all pouty on the cover. It was like, wow, okay, they're like, and it wasn't even intentional. It just kind of they were probably just like, and it just happened. You know what I mean? Like, and the trend just kind of went that way. Yeah,
I remember hearing Stay What You Are. It was the summer before I left to go to California, and this girl I was hanging out with, she got the demo tape, and we're listening to it in the car, and I'm like, this is really good. This is different. This is something new. But it was like not adult. Like I can't put the words to it. It stepped away from their previous albums and kind of.
It sounded more grown up. It sounded more put together. I mean, it sounded more produced. And that's the thing. Like it was when like I remember when the Heath episode, you talked about how Midtown had like a producer.
Yeah.
And like how that concept was so foreign to these bands. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what happened. Like you had grown-ups like who would come to this music and be like, dude, move that chorus here or put that bridge there. And like they would help craft the songs and make the record sound incredible. And I mean, I think back to what we were talking about is like kind of how that shift happened. I mean, Drive-Thru Records was that was really what I think took it to a whole other level.
Absolutely.
I mean, they existed in a different capacity in like the late 90s, and they were putting out like the first band they put out, I think, was like Cousin Oliver, like a ska band from Orange County or whatever.
And Phoenix RTX Bandits.
Yeah, River Phoenix and
River Phoenix,
River Phoenix, then Phoenix TX, and then RX Bandits, and like
RTX.
It was all
Bandits. Yeah, I think it's
it was all that stuff, and then it shifted. Same thing, like they kind of they probably saw something coming, like a wave of this stuff coming.
Yeah.
And even they had another Jersey band too. They had Mother Mania before all this stuff happened.
Well, what happened? They picked up Midtown, and then Gabe. Yeah. They were friends with Newfound Glory, and Gabe talked, and I think Gabe introduced Richard and Stephanie to Newfound Glory, and then they picked them up.
It was like you need to sign these guys. Mm-hmm. Like you need to do this. And then Dashboard was technically Dashboard was friends with Newfound Glory, and
that's definitely a touchy topic with Drive-Thru.
Yeah, because Vagrant just stole them essentially. Not to get into like the nastiness of the music industry, but
I don't think that ever calmed down. I remember the first record that I think Drive-Thru had put it or recorded it for them, and then Vagrant picked up that record, or something crazy happened.
Yep. Yeah, it was nasty. It was not a smooth transition.
No.
But that shows you how crazy it got. It was like a feed frenzy for these type of bands. It was like, they wanted to essentially cash in. They're like, they saw this trend going this way, and they saw kids coming to shows and spending their money. I was like, all right, we gotta figure out how to make this work, and they would fight over shit like that.
Yeah, I think in any situation when money gets involved, you have to really have an understanding. You can't just be, oh, we're just friends. It's like, no, you literally have to treat it as a business.
Oh, it's a business, man, and that's where it gets messy, because it starts off as you and your buds playing in a band in a VFW hall, and then it turns into, okay, is this our career now? Mm-hmm. And it's like, how do we do that? Or how is this going to work? Wait, we have to form an LLC? What is that? It's nuts, it's just it's different, and it's, people can adjust to that, and people can adapt to that. And a lot of people didn't, and it got really messy. Really
it's hard
quick.
too, because the guys you usually start the bands with are your friends from years. And then when you mix business and friendship or family and friendship, it can get really messy, unless
Absolutely.
There's bands that obviously works for. If you look at like Alkaline Trio, I mean, they went through drummers, but they kept it, like Dan and Matt have been friends forever, and then
absolutely, I mean, it's you can grow together as a band, or you can you're just not ready for it, and it's about finding the right guys to be or right people to be in a band with and making it work. But
okay, so dude, I can talk about this shit all day. But
we're going off.
We're going. This is a great direction. Again, people listen to this for nostalgia, and they're connecting with all the things we're saying, and people are probably yelling at their speaker or whatever, listening through, going like, yeah, but you forgot this band or this band too, or this album, or hopefully they're even looking on Spotify or YouTube and they're finding these songs, going, holy shit, I forgot about Mother Mania. I forgot about that band. I'm gonna go listen to them and go down that funnel.
I still talk, like I book shows that Jeff from Mother Mania runs a brewery in Asbury Park.
Oh, does he?
And I book shows at his brewery.
Wait, which brewery does he run?
Asbury Park Brewery.
Is it close by where Asbury Bowl used to be? Or
Asbury Lanes?
Reopened? Asbury Lanes, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. We can get into that, but later. That's a separate podcast.
Asbury Lanes didn't really come into fruition, I felt, until after, like way after. We didn't know about that. I think didn't that come up? And we don't have to go down into that, but early 2000s?
2003 it opened as the Lanes that everyone knew and loved, and it closed down 2 years ago. But now reopened as this Disney World looking thing. Yeah, it's oh man, it's real bad. It's just real messy, because even like the last 2 years that it existed, I was booking a lot of the shows there. Oh wow. So it was weird how they just kind of like cut it all. Like it's nasty, and we don't need to get into it.
Did you book the Lawrence Arms show that they played on the reunion?
That wasn't me, but yeah, that was a sick show. I was there.
Oh, were you? Oh, that show was so great. Yeah, they were the last band we went on tour with. We did 2 months with them, and then that was
I remember that. I remember hearing that tour, and that was when Fallon was in the band, right?
Yeah, Brian was in the band for that last tour.
All right, I'm going to interview you for a second. How did you end up meeting that guy? Because he wasn't like a Gabe or. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't like a guy in that North Jersey scene who was like stood out. You know what I mean? Yeah. His bands were super under the radar. And they were kind of in a weird area. They were he grew up in Red Bank, but his bands in high school, he went to high school up in like Hackettstown. Yeah. So those bands, like Surrogate McKenzie were, they were definitely under the radar. It's hard for me to even find flyers with their name on it. I know they played shows. I know they existed. I have 3 of their tapes. Like, I know it existed, but and he's another one who just he started playing songs No Release was this thing he did at first when he was super young, and he just wrote songs and put them out acoustic or whatever. And then Surrogate McKenzie started, but he didn't stop either. He was like, all right, so now that band's done, I'm going to do this. And it was like Amping Copper. I was like, okay, cool. Then it's that broke up real quick, which was Surrogate McKenzie 2. It was the same guys, but they were doing a different style of music, essentially, And then it was all right, well, now I'm going to do my Bruce Springsteen type thing, my first stab at it. And it was the Cincinnati Rail Tie or whatever it was. you know, and then it just kept going, and it was like this charming man, and then finally it was Gaslight.
Yeah.
You know, and then in between there, he ended up in Langmeyer for a stretch. So it was like, how did, you know what I mean? Like, how did that even happen?
Chris quit, and there's an interview before yours where I interviewed Sean, who's the drummer in Langmeyer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, buddy of mine, and actually it's cool. This podcast has really been great at really connecting people again. I mean, Sean hadn't talked for a while, just for whatever. It wasn't, out of animosity, but we connected. So
no, but life gets in the way, man.
I mean, there's always been ups and downs with our band, but I talked to Sean and talked to him about this, and we mentioned Brian, and what happened was Chris quit, and it was bad. Like me and Chris, again, going back to friends, me and Chris have been best friends since we were 14 years old, and he quit the band, and me and him we were like enemy. Yeah, we just didn't talk. Like I fucking hated Chris when he left, and we're like he quit. We go to we go to Applebee's in Bergen County.
That sounds so depressing.
And
Sorry.
I'm like, no, I was like, I'm gonna take over singing. We need to find a guitar player. And Casey from Forever Endeavor, he was in Langmeyer back in the day, and then Sean, and then we had Andrew Courtney, who was the owner of Two Hep Records with us. Yeah, because we were on the label. And they're like, all right, so we go on this kind of mission to find guitarists, and I forget who we had interviewed along the way. And then we ended up, so Sean's like, yeah, I got this guy, his name's Brian, his voice is really rough, it's different. And then, now this is the time where hot water music was huge in Florida, but hadn't made its way up north, so no one really could, we were all used to the sugary sounding, like, melodic voices, and then hot water was something where, oh god,
so gritty. It was
so gritty.
You can hear their beards like through the.
You can see their posters, and you're like, "Damn, I have to be at one of these shows." It looks like it's 1,000 degrees, and it's awesome.
It's awesome.
So Sean tells me about Brian, and we're okay. Let's try him out. We meet at the Garden State Plaza, and I remember this clearly. We're sitting by the fountain, and he like runs up behind me and taps me on the shoulder, and he's like squatting down on the fountain ledge, and he's like, "So I hear you guys are looking for a guitarist." I remember this like vividly, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, what's up?" I met him for the first time. Super nice guy. He was definitely, he was a quirky dude.
He still is.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting guy. Like, and actually, the first time I met him, Congress of Cal played a show in Hackettstown, and I talked to this in another episode. Congress of Cal played our last show in Hackettstown, and Brian had put that show on.
Okay.
And it was where the first time we saw one cool guy play.
Oh boy.
And
okay.
So we get Brian in the band, and we ended up tuning our guitars to kind of this half step down because I could not hit those notes like Chris. And we found our sound, and then Brian the whole time he was like, I really want to write. I was like, yeah, man, if it fits, let's write. So he wrote some songs, and he was always writing. He smoked like a fucking fiend. And then when we got back on the tour, he was like, I can't deal with you guys anymore. He just we just burned him out. And he's like, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm like, all right. And then that broke the band up. Like Brian quitting the band was the nail in the coffin for me. I'm like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I'm fucking done.
Understandable. Yeah. I talked to him about it. I did a show with him in January, and we were talking about the archives because he's like, yeah, this Instagram thing, like NJPP archives, like followed me and blah blah blah. And like all these old flyers. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's me. He's like, oh no shit. I'm like, yeah. So we started talking about it, and I was like, yeah. So like, what was it like being like you were in Langmeyer for like a second? He's like, yeah, dude, those dudes were intense on the road. He's like, it was just like, they were like, he's like, I joined the band and they were already kind of like spiraling out of control as far as like a band. I mean, like, and dude, you lose founding members. We were a
fucking disaster, dude.
Yeah, it was tricky, but it's like at that point, you especially like you dedicated your entire adult life and then some to this. And you're like, well, I'm not stopping now.
Yeah.
Like I at least have to keep going and see it through, and sometimes it just gets insane. It gets intense, and it's hard to really keep up with it.
Well, it was because Brian wasn't a big drinker, and he was really religious, and like Sean wouldn't let him smoke, and so he's driving the band. So, and then we were just super sensitive about fucking everything, and we were pissed off that all these bands are making, and Brian was like, what did I get myself into? And then plus being on the road for 2 months, that's a really hard thing to do.
Dude, absolutely, especially in that time period.
Oh,
I mean,
dude, yeah, and then
it's super hard.
well, I talked to Brendan from Lawrence Arms years after
Mhm.
that when we had broken up. I saw him. He was like, "Holy shit!" He said, "Yeah." He's like, "We decided after that tour, we're never doing a 2-month tour again. We
It's
keep
just
it
too
to
much,
1 month." Yeah, because he's like, we all of us. It was such a mind fuck, but.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk about it. I mean, I had no animosity towards Brian. I actually saw him years later. I moved back to Jersey and started Arcade Academy, which is like a second band I did, which you
Yep.
have on the archives. And we played the show, and Brian was there. And I walk up, I'm like, "Hey, man, what's up?" He's like, "Oh, nothing. I'm playing this band, this charming band, and we're just
Mhm.
going for it." And his wife at the time, she was managing them, and I think
Yeah,
he was
Holly.
like, yeah, and
Yep.
she's like married to, or I'm sorry, her brother was the bass player, or is the bass player.
Correct. Yeah, Alex.
And he goes, "Yeah, we're going for it." And I'm like, "All right, cool, man. Congratulations." And then a year later, Nina from Avery, I was reaching. It was when Instant Messenger was big, and I was reaching out around a bunch of people, and we'll get in the archives. Just kind of going in that direction. But I said,
Yep.
I was like, "Hey, anybody have any new music?" And she goes, "Check out Gaslight Anthem. It's really good." So I listened to it, and I go, "Is that Brian Fallon singing?"
Yep.
And she's like, "Yeah, this is the greatest thing ever." And then you just watch them do the 59 sound and then just explode. And
It didn't even make any sense. Like, and that's not saying like he's not a talented guy, and the record is amazing, But it's just like how did and they weren't doing anything like super trendy or anything, It wasn't like they got
it
big
was
because
it wasn't this big sound that I was like, what I understood, but I didn't quite see why it was so huge.
Yeah, and it got to just an insane level. Like,
oh my god, he's playing fucking Reading
yeah,
Festival with Eddie Vedder singing backups. I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
He's literally sharing a microphone with Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. It's like, dude, what is happening right now? It's like, what? Like, this is nuts. Like, they did the PNC Arts Center, like 14,000 people in Jersey. It's
but he saw it though. Like when we toured with him, he was always writing in his book. He was always writing songs. He always had his head down. Like he just, it's they always say you manifest. You manifest where you want to go, and where you really want to go, you have to kind of live as if you're already there. And I felt like he was just living there in his head, and then he found his voice, he found his songs, and
he got it. He found what he wanted to do, and he went for it.
Yeah, and I'm like so happy for him because.
The one thing I will say about him too is like he comes from this scene technically, and he doesn't take that for granted one bit. Like there was, Gaslight did their last big tour. On the Get Hurt record, and he literally brought out these two bands from Jersey that were, very small, and he didn't have to do that, but he did that because he wanted to bring bands from his area who were going for it. Like he brought this band called the Scandals out. He brought this band called Sammy K out, and they were, these are probably some of the biggest tours those bands ever did in their life, and he didn't need to do that. He could have easily probably brought a band on the road with them that was like, on the same label or the same man. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but I don't think he ever. I mean, he's got. I mean, if you look at the guy's tattoos, he's got his tattoos. When you get like, inked, or you get like, that shit in your skin, it kind of locks you into that time frame. And
absolutely,
he had like fucking Sunny Day Real Estate and all that shit on his arms, and he had just so many band tattoos that it's kind of embedded in him. And I think that watching him, he's never let go of that. But I think the fame thing, I saw some interview with him, and he kind of weirded him out.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it especially with them, it snuck up on them. They're like, that 59 sound came out on Side One Dummy. Like it wasn't like they were on a major label or anything like, like it was just on a punk label, and it just got super big. And it's crazy, like, but he's, this is his job now. This is what he does for a living. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. So when you're talking to him, so the NJPP archive, he is even saying like he's checking it out. So I want to kind of segue into that because Joe here, in our Facebook group, on Facebook, it's called the North Jersey Pop Punk 1994 to 2002 group. All of a sudden, this dude named Joe Pulito starts posting, "Hey, I have a bunch of the songs that I found, and they're uploaded to the internet." And we're like, "Wait, what?" And we go through it, and he's got this Tumblr page and YouTube and SoundCloud with all of these bands that were either you knew their name or they're so fucking obscure, and they're all online. And I'm looking at this now. My career for the last 13, 15, whatever it is, over a decade has been in graphic design and video production and all this stuff. So I know how much time goes into this shit. And I'm looking at it and I'm going to the YouTube channel. I'm like, this motherfucker must have spent so much fucking time doing this. And I want to find out, I want to find out like why this started, and I want to go into the particulars. But so let's start with like, when did you get this idea? When was that aha moment? And you're going, and then how did it start?
So I don't know how, but someone added me to that Facebook group, and I was like, oh,
Casey,
cool.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, cool, look at that. You know, like, oh, look, all these old bands and like all these people from the old bands. Like, cool, this is cool. And I kind of like strolling through, and it looked like there was at one point a time where there was talks of something like this, and there was like, they're like, yeah, we're gonna get a web page, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna upload the songs, and we're gonna try and do, and it just seemed like it was very disjointed, and it was almost like there was like too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, you know, and no one really could get it done, you know, or whatever, you know. And I was like, all right, well, I have all of these songs. Like,
How?
I'm not like, so again, so
how do you have all of these songs?
So, you know, when you're booking shows in the 90s, people are literally sending you tapes, cassettes, tapes, CDs, whatever. And, you know, like, and I ran a small record label for a while, so I'd be constantly just getting this stuff. Meanwhile, even when I'd go to the shows, like I would consume all this stuff.
Okay.
I was like, all right. I was like, I need to, like, all right, that band has a demo. Cool. I'm going to get that. You know, like, so I always just grabbed this stuff, and I never got rid of it, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, I always, like, this, as corny as it sounds, is like, this scene kind of changed my life, you know? It set me, you know, and it set me on, you know, like the career I have now is because of me going to that show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all because of that. So it's very important to me. But, you know, it was really just, I had all this stuff, and I was like, oh, people are looking for all this stuff. I was like, well, I have it. I was like, I'll put it on the internet, you know, like, and it should be there.
Yeah.
Like, there's, you know, it changed my life, but it probably changed other people's lives too in some capacity, you know, so why should they not be able to hear that song that brings back fond memories or whatever, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, dude.
So, and there was, you know, so I started looking, I was like, yeah, there's, you know, like there was like random songs out there from bands, you know, that you could find if you really looked hard. But I was like, there should be a one-stop shop for all of this, you know?
Yeah.
And that's essentially what I was like, all right, I'll start doing it, you know? And, you know, YouTube was where I started it, because it was like, you know, YouTube, as far as like social media and consuming media, is like the spot where most people nowadays, like, they actually discover new music through YouTube. So I was like, all right, this is probably, you know, I was like, I'll put it up there. It's like, I'll create a channel or whatever, you know, and I'll just like start doing it, you know, and that's how it started. And I was like, all right, let me get the broad strokes out of the way. So I, like, you know, I would take like the quote unquote heavy hitters. I was like, all right, let me get all the Humble Beginning stuff. Let me get the Lane Meyer stuff. Let me get the Boxcar stuff. Let me, you know, like the One Cool Guy, like all those, like, you know, the bigger quote unquote bands from that era. I was like, let me make sure that's up there. And then just kind of snowballed from there, because like, all right, so where do you stop?
Yeah.
You know, where do you put the fence around this scene or whatever? Because, all right, yeah, so let's focus on Jersey. Cool. But there's all these bands from upstate New York and Long Island and Pennsylvania that would play all those shows too. So it's like, all right, well, you got to put Nooner in there, you know, like, you know, they're technically from Pennsylvania, but like Pinball put out their record. So it's like, and you played a ton of shows with them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how do you not include a band like Nooner? I was like, all right. Then it's like, all right, well, Cooter played a ton of shows, you know, and they're from, you know, so then it's like,
and Lounge and
Lounge and Beefcake and like all those bands from upstate New York. And then it was like Long Island was the same thing, man. Like Long Island, like North Jersey had a pretty insane scene, and Jersey in general at that time frame had a pretty insane scene, but Long Island was nuts too. And all the bands that came out of Long Island, I mean, like,
they were good.
Holy shit. You know, they all started as shitty punk bands that had a demo tape. You know, like, you know, Jesse, you know, like Brand New was the Rookie Lot, and they had a demo tape. And Eben was, you know, Eben from
Yearly.
Saves the Day was in Yearly, and they had a, you know, so I mean, like all those bands started somewhere too. You know, like the Movie Life was just a band that had a demo tape at some point, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, let's just keep it rolling, you know? And it just kind of, and the scary part was, as I was just digging through my files, I was like, man, I have a lot of this shit, you know? And then, you know, eventually it started getting to the point where people started hitting me up and be like, yo, are you looking for this? Like, I see it's not on there. You know, I was like, actually, I only have like 2 songs from that. They're like, cool, well, here's the rest. And it just kind of started, you know, it started kind of like getting kind of crazy. I was like, oh, damn, people are intrigued by it enough that they're hitting me up and like willing to contribute, I'm pretty excited to contribute.
Did you now, with all these CDs, did you have to burn them in to make them digital and then scan the artwork and then, because YouTube, you have to open up Photoshop,
right.
You have to upload an image, you have to make it 1920 by 1080 or whatever it is, and you have to upload that, and then you have to do the next song and then upload that. There's no just mass upload. You could do add another video, but the artwork, it's all this stuff is
creating that initial video is time consuming.
Hold on, dude. I want people to really understand this shit because, then he's got the name of the song, the band, he's got from the compilation, Oldies But Goodies. That's one example right here. So he has to do the description. Did you put tags in these?
There's tags in there, and really it's just like what I want to do is make sure that it was all connected in some way. Wow. So like, all right, so you're listening to this song, and it's like, oh, cool, and like you look at the description, like, oh, it was from a compilation called Oldies But Goodies, whatever. Cool. All right, it was on Negative Progression Records. Cool. All right, and it's like, all right, well, now if you want to hear the rest of the comp, click this link. If you want to go to this hub of where all this information is, go to NJPParchives.com. Yeah. So like that was the big thing, because like you could just put these songs up there, but if there's no infrastructure behind it where people can find more of it, or dude, people get lost in a YouTube hole all the time, man. Yeah. And that's like one of those things, like, you're watching an old video or something, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, I haven't heard that song in a while. And then it just, it's all connected.
Man, there's moments where I'll be, for years, I'd be drinking on a Friday, I'd come home and I'd go, I wonder if I have this video, and I'd watch that, and I'd be like, and it's like, then it would trigger another band in your head, and you start searching for that, and you're like, oh my god. So with this, I can feel that people would go on there, because I'm just scrolling through this right now as we're talking, and we've got the whatever this compilation with this like eyeball on here, Try Seeing Through My Eyes, and you got Dynamite Boy, point. And you got Spindle. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, or Dharma Boys and Boxcar, So these names would then set you off a 6. So you'd click on this and it would go down, and you're thinking, oh my god, then Douglas, right? Then I would go on Spotify, see if they're on there. Yep. And then I would say, what other bands are they? Like, oh my god, this reminds me of this band. And you just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, and that was the idea, just to kind of have a place where at least it could all live, So if, so you're not like drastically searching for stuff, like you can be like, oh, okay, that band, and there it is. There's their discography.
How long did it take you? Wait, sorry, go on. You go.
No, like the discography thing is tricky too, because it's like, there's certain bands you know how they started, and it was like the same process. Like, cool, you had a demo tape. Then if you took it one step further, you had a 7-inch, and then if you were like, at the time you're like, dude, you have a CD with your music on it? Like, holy shit, you made it, and that was like kind of the process of these bands. If it would either end at the demo tape or end at the 7-inch or end at the CD. And it's like, all right, so now you have to figure out what was their actual discography, because there's other bands, like, especially when the internet started getting into it, like, there'd just be random MP3s flying everywhere, or like you could download fucking like Real Audio Player to to listen to like a 30-second clip of it, so I would, every time that would pop up on a shitty website, like a GeoCities website, I would constantly download that shit. Wow. Like, just back in the day, because I was like, just, like, who knows, like, not who knows, but it's like, like, this is the only way I could listen to this music at the time. You know what I mean? So, the other resource I would use is there's that Wayback Machine, like that internet database, like where you can look up old websites.
What?
Oh, dude, yeah, I'll send you the link. But so I would go, like, let's say there was like, back in the day there was those websites like ska.com or whatever, where it would just be like a database of bands, or like Ultimate Band Lists or whatever. And these are like 90s websites, But they had like all the bands from like this NJ Ska was one of those sites that had like, it was just like a show listing site, but also by the list of the bands. So they're like, all right, I need to find out if, what was Lane Meyer's discography technically? Like what did you guys actually put out, right. And make sure, like, do I have it all? Am I missing something? So like I go to that site, and you could actually, it's like it would take screenshots of like those old websites from the 90s or whatever. So I'd go in and be like, okay, so look, oh, good, Lane Meyer had an actual link on your website that had discography, so I would check, I would be like, okay, am I missing something? I think I hit you up maybe a year ago. I was like, yo, there's this fucking demo tape you put out in 99. Like, I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, yo, do you have it? You're like, dude, I don't know what the fuck that is. Okay, well, I'm off to a bad start. But yeah, so I ended up tracking that down. This kid Jeff in Pennsylvania hit me. I was like, yo, I actually have this tape, and I was like, cool, send it. You know, like, so sent it, and you know, we got it up there. But you know, so I would kind of check it that way, where I was like, all right, so I want to make sure, and there's still stuff missing, you know, and I'm trying to fill in the gaps here and there.
That's
you know,
crazy.
because there are so many bands. I mean, like, just like right now, like number wise, like there is just based on, you know, what is up there now, there's like 430 bands accounted for on that database essentially, and that's just like that's not counting the comps. Like that's just bands that have put out some sort of a release. And again, this kind of goes past like the time frame that we're talking about and before a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it covers from like 94 to basically when Pure Volume and MySpace became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it goes up to like 2006, 2007, you know, like, because that's at that point, like a lot of the stuff kind of lives in some capacity, but a lot of those sites, like even Pure Volume, MySpace, they're gone. They're there technically, but the content is not there. So like if you go to like a band we used to like tour with between 2003 and 2007, you can't find their music online. You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, well, I got to figure out a way to get that on the internet somehow too. You know what I mean? So just kind of like it just keeps going and going and going, you know?
Do you find that you sit down, like how often do you listen to it? I know a lot of people when they do something like this, they'll do it for other people and they won't actually sit down and enjoy it themselves. Like, do you find yourself listening to these, like going to your own channel, listening to it?
The good thing about like creating it too is like it got me to revisit a lot of this stuff. I was like, oh man, that song ruled, or that song was terrible, or you know what I mean? Like it just kind of like, it was fun to kind of go through it and rediscover these bands and, you know, listen to it. Yeah. And like, I'll put it on every now and then for like, you know, like that Humble EP, like Humble Beginnings EP, like that's still like, like the gold standard of that era, I think. You know what I mean?
Man,
like,
that album's so great. 334 kicks in. It's like ding, 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 ding. Oh, it's so good.
I mean, it like, you know, that EP sums up that whole era, I think, you know, and I'll still listen to that. Like
yeah,
you know,
I'm still trying
to be like, you know,
I'm still trying to get John from Nada on here because he recorded that record, and that record
he recorded everything. Speaking of which,
yeah,
you know, he
I mean,
recorded a lot of stuff.
Him and Badami, but John, he would record all of Humble stuff, and then when we did the LP or the full length, whatever, we ended up going to Nada because we just were like, man, we really love what the shit you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, he was incredible at it, and he started it off right too, man. He was like, you know, he was in a band, he was in Lounge, and they were super underrated. They
were fun.
But they were, you know, he was like, listen, it's gonna be. I remember his deal at the time was like $50 a song, no matter how long it takes.
Yep.
And like for a band, you know, like for 4 people to scrape together a couple $100 to do an EP, it's like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like those like I remember Outline did their first EP because of that. He's like, dude, we took forever, but we did 4 or 5 songs. We raised the $300 it was, you know, and John was super cool, and it was just, you know, and that was a good way for him to get the ball rolling, you know.
Yeah, have you ever been to John's studio?
No, I've actually never been up there.
So when we recorded, it was this crazy blizzard happening, and we go up there. And we're just it's about an hour and a half or something in New York State, and we're going up on 287 to 87 to get up there.
Yeah.
And it's just this fucking snowstorm. So the first day we recorded fine. Then me and Chris had to go back up and do vocals, and we go back up there, and he was in this house at the time. It was his mom's house. He was in the basement, and then down the hill was this big, just like warehouse where his grandfather had a tour bus, and he kept it in it. So now I think the warehouse is now the studio, which I've never got to see. But yeah, we go up to record the vocals. We come out, there's like 2 feet of snow, and we're like, well, we got to drive home. So we're driving home down 87 doing like 20 miles an hour, and these giant trucks are passing by us. I'm like, I hope I don't die recording this shitty fucking record.
That's fucking great, man.
I was nuts.
But yeah, I mean, he's still doing it today, and he's crushing it still. You know?
I mean, he did was it Deja? How do you say it? The brand
Deja Antada, I think.
Something like that. I can never say that. I mean, that record's it's really good. He recorded. I thought he recorded that, or is it the first one?
He did Your Favorite Weapon or whatever it was, the first record, I think.
Right.
He did he did some My Chemical Romance stuff. You know, like some of these, he did some Coheed and Cambria stuff. You know, like stuff that, you know, at the time was like, yeah, it's their first record, cool. But then like fast forward like 5 years later, they're like some of the biggest bands in that scene, and in the country, in the world.
Dude, when I first heard My Chemical Romance, it was the first record, not Three Cheers for Revenge. It was the first one, and I heard it. I'm like, this is awful.
Yeah,
I was like,
dude,
this is so awful.
I don't like that first record at all.
I don't like it at all, and I saw them play. But then I heard Three Cheers for Revenge, and I'm like, oh my god.
It's like, it's on, dude. I
remember
remember
Helena or whatever the song is. I heard that, and I'm like, oh, it's over.
Yeah, and like they showed up. Like I remember it was like overnight. Like it was when Pure Volume was like the main source for music at that time.
Yeah,
and like their profile picture changed, and like he had the eyeliner on, and it was like they all had their like black and white suits or whatever they were, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then I'm Not Okay or whatever that song, like I hit play. I was like, oh, here we go. Like it's fucking on, man. And they got astronomically big.
Well, then they put out that epic record, Black Parade.
Yeah, the Black Parade. It was like they were on a whole nother level. Like they were like straight up mallcore. Like it's just like they were speaking to like a whole different generation of kids too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and they came from that scene too, man. Like there's Flyer where they're opening for fucking Worthless United at the Garfield American Legion. Like it's just really funny. And even
I heard that Gerard. So I don't know if this is true, but Chris Conti, who played in Humble, he was telling me, because Chris used to work at the Hot Topic in Rockaway Mall, along with Josh Humble and Sean Smith from Lane Meyer.
Everybody else,
every fucking person. And apparently, I'm not sure, but apparently Gerard worked there. And he worked there for 2 years. I don't know. Someone might have to correct me on that. I'll definitely have to correct me on that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I thought that was amazing. They were from like West Milford.
Yeah, and I mean, like, dude, Frank, the guitar player at Euro, he still plays now. I still book shows for him, and I booked him at Asbury Lanes actually. But he was in Pensy Prep, which was guys who, there was a guy from, he used to be in a band called Stick Figure Suicide started.
Oh my god, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so like they were guys. I mean, he retweeted something, like the NJPP archive stuff one day. He found like True Zero, like that 7-inch.
Yep.
That they put out.
Alan.
He retweeted it. He retweeted. He's like, dude, this was my shit back in the day.
That's so
like,
funny.
and and it was funny because it was just like 5,000 teenage girls liked it, and they're like, what am I listening to? Like a True Zero song. They're like, why am I?
Alan from True Zero. He was in when Lane Meyer started. He thought of the name Lane Meyer. He came up with it.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he did that, and then he didn't want to tour, so we had kicked him out. But True Zero, I mean, that Alan used to work at Flipside, and he showed us all about Jawbreaker and all of these bands, because Chris Barker would show up in one of these fat bands. He's like, hey man, if you want to listen to some real shit, here you go. And then blew Chris's mind, Chris Lanemeyer. I always have to say where they're from because I'm thinking everyone knows this, but I mean, Alan introduced all, like the Jefferson Kids. That's where all we were from. He introduced all of us to this music that we had no idea, like Mineral, the Static Prevails.
And he was like a couple years older, probably, right?
He was about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
older.
I mean that age difference when you're in high school or around that age is a huge difference because even me, like I'm probably a couple years younger than you, and so it all comes in these like little waves. Like I went to shows watching you play, and like the Humble Beginnings guys, and whoever, all those other bands, and then like kids that came to see my band play. Like there's one kid in particular, his name's Justin, and he still hits me up about fucking 37 Slurp every time I talk to him. But he was in a band called Man Overboard, and they, like we all kind of like it works in these. Man Overboard went on to be like one of the bigger bands in that pop punk scene, and like 2009 on, like when all that this whole new wave from like the Wonder Years and all that shit came, like so they were part of that scene that came, but they started watching my band and I started watching your band, you know what I mean? Like it all kind of it's incredible how those few years make a difference, of how you perceive things and how you learn things from those past bands and how you kind of build on it from there.
Yeah. Have you gotten has anyone yelled at you for putting their songs up on the archives?
No one yelled yet, which is good, I guess. I mean, and honestly, dude, if any of these bands, like if you don't want to be a part of it, that's fine. Like I'll take you down. It's not like it takes 2 seconds. I will delete it, but the YouTube channel got disabled.
Really?
Yeah. The original one got disabled and I moved everything over to SoundCloud.
Wait, I'm on it right now though.
Yeah, it's a new one.
So why did it get disabled?
So basically what a band from New York, who they were fucking awesome. I'm not gonna name their name, just because. But I guess they must have he didn't do it intentionally, but he must have copyrighted his songs or whatever, and it kind of just went. It caught it, and dude, I mean, I literally had like 40 something of their songs, because they were a band from like the late 90s up all the way to like 2004, and it just like one day I'm just getting notifications like boom, 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 and I got 41 hits of like copyright infringement or whatever.
Shit.
And it was like overnight. It's like, oh, cool. So it's all gone. Cool. All right. Well,
Oh my God.
yeah. So now I've kind of shifted it. It's like a 2-pronged thing now. So basically everything's like the MP3s are up on a SoundCloud page. And what I've been doing is I'm I'm re-uploading all the comps to a proper YouTube page. And then eventually I'll start getting it back all on YouTube. But yeah, it's, little by little. So.
Now, do you have any what are the future plans? So we're at an hour, so I'm gonna kind of cap us, but
sure.
I don't want to hold up your time. But what are they? Do you have any future plans for it, or are you just kind of just winging it?
I mean, what I'm starting to do now is get like the flyers more organized, because there's so many floating around. I literally have a stack of like 600 flyers. Wow. that I used to collect back in the day just because that's what you did, and they're all scanned now and they're ready to go. But I'm kind of just like getting a better way to kind of categorize those, like tagging with the bands. So if you're on the page and you want to see like, a Lanemeyer flyer or a, Congress Cow flyer or whatever, you can just like click on the tag and it can show you all the, so each flyer will have its own separate post, things like that. And yeah, just like getting the comps back up there. And then, eventually I'd love to do like video stuff, which is a little trickier, but
yeah. I think people have footage. I know Sean,
the footage is out there.
Yeah, Sean from Lanemeyer, he has we had a shit ton of VHS stuff. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sure he didn't delete it, but I mean, you there's got to be people who have that, and then they could just transfer that over.
It's just a matter of everything kind of transfers in real time, so it's just like it's time consuming. But I mean that's another thing I want to get into, and like eventually when I get the music part and the flyer part up to par, I guess, or like where I'm comfortable, like I think this is a good representation of the majority of it, at least for the time being. Then I could kind of venture into that and see if there's ways to just reach out to people. And like there's a kid I know who does a hardcore database called Hate56.
Okay.
It's absolutely incredible, and his name's Sonny, and that's kind of like what I'd like to base it around.
Wait, Sonny, the dreaded tattoo guy from back in the day?
No, he's a kid from South Jersey, from like Marlton. And he's probably a couple years younger than me, but he does an like hate56.com. It's incredible if you're into like that hardcore scene. Like it's absolutely incredible, and it's like a full on database. You can go and search the band, and then like he films all the this is what he does for a living now. Like he just started one of those Patreon sites or whatever.
Yep.
So he literally just travels around and films hardcore bands and posts them, and it's incredible. He's really really incredible at it.
He's living my life. That's all I wanted to do for a really long time, was just travel around with bands and just make content for him.
Yeah, you should talk to him, man. He's got his shit together for sure. So.
That's incredible. Well, I'm on his page right now. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, he's so good at cataloging all that stuff.
I wonder if he has Uprise. Nope. Not Uprise.
All right, I'll have him track some down.
That's so cool, man. Let me see what else we got here. Do you still go to shows?
Yeah, I still book shows. Absolutely. Yeah.
Were you booking again?
Well, my full-time job is at the Count Basie Theater, so we do hilarious shit there, like Jay Leno and Ringo Starr and shit that's just it's hilarious.
Oh my God.
That's like my job. But then I run a thing called like a booking collective called Aftermath Collective, and I still book punk shows and DIY shows in Jersey and Philly.
Damn. No.
Yeah, so I mean, literally, dude, I went to that first show. I just haven't stopped for 20 years in some capacity. Like it's just always been a part of me,
That's awesome. I love seeing that. I just talked to Heath Miller this week. He had me on it, and talking to the guys. There's the people who were in the bands, and the bands didn't really ever go anywhere unless you're Brian Fallon. I mean, he was the one crushing it now. You get the people who were recording bands. They're still a lot of them are still recording bands. Or booking shows, Heath, you making an actual career out of it. And so there is money to be made, and I'm sure people, Seth, Seth, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your last name right now. he had Seth Tucker Holster. He did the original Lanemeyer shirts back in the day, and he's still printing shirts and designing them.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to do it. I mean, it's tricky, and you kind of have to kind of navigate it. But I mean, there's ways to do it, and it's just a matter
of people are actually spending the money. You can make money off this stuff, but you just
I mean, like, dude, the place I work at, it's all baby boomer content, and baby boomers have fucking money to burn, man. And they're just like, yeah, we want to be entertained. It's like, yeah, we'll pay to go see Sinbad, whatever. It's happening, So, yeah.
If you could put on a show from back in the day right now, this would be the last question. You put a show on. Actually, I'll do another question after that. But if you could put a show on from back in the day, do it now, but bands from back in the day. It was
sure
3 bands. Who would you do?
It would, 3.
Yep.
That's fucking tricky, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I could say like 10, like a normal.
A normal VFW show.
Who would the 3 bands be? We'll make it 4, and then where would you want to have it?
Well, like for me, it would be at the Derby Firehouse because that was like where like my spot where I went to shows as a kid. Okay. But and then it gets tricky because like Humble would have to play, Lanemeyer would have to play, but then there's like all those Trenton area bands that should be like that I would want included too. Like Go Real Slow was a big deal for a while. Like I put out their first EP. You know what I mean? Like they were like I'm still friends with like the drummer was in my wedding. Like we're still tight.
Awesome.
And they were a big deal back then. And then there was like Your Mama Love Us, same thing. Like Chris Pinto's a good friend, and we play music together. And like I would be awesome to hear those songs again. You know what I mean? So it's hard to narrow it down because there's so many bands. But at the same time, there's like bands like Lounge, who was, like I said, was super underrated. And then there's other bands I used to tour with. There's a band called On 3 from like super South Jersey that were just like insanely good. That never got the credit they deserve. So it's hard to narrow it down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard question. It's kind of a trick.
Yeah, but it's like Bigwig. It's like, dude, of course Bigwig has to. You know what I mean? Like Bigwig has to be there. It's like,
I mean, I love Tom. Still plays. Tom. I'm still trying to get him on an interview, but he is doing like this country band in Nashville now. He's playing country music.
Dude, but yeah, I'm still trying to figure out a way to book Bigwig. I'm gonna try and I will.
They just played. They just played in. They played with the Boss Tones.
And, they're still going, but I'm gonna book them in Asbury Park at Jeff from Mother Mania's Brewery. I'm gonna do it. Like it's gonna happen. Like he doesn't know it yet, but it's gonna happen.
I'm sure he's going to hear this before. Well, he will be hearing this episode before his plays, and
perfect.
It sounds like Tom's been listening.
Yeah, so I'll hit him up. That's going to happen.
Awesome, man. So if anyone wants to check that out, because at this point, I have no idea who's really listening to this. I know a lot of people in the North Jersey punk group are listening, but there are people that are listening who are friends of the people I'm interviewing. But if you want to check out the NJPP archive, it's njpparchives.tumblr.com. That's the way I get there. Is there just
it's njpparchives.com.
Okay, so that'll just redirect there.
Yep.
Okay. And man. I mean, Joe, you, as everyone says, you're doing the Lord's work.
I appreciate it, man. That's a bit of an overstatement, but yeah. But thanks.
Yeah.